NBC Studios in Burbank, Studio One. The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Late spring, 1977. The air inside the building carried that particular mixture of cigarette smoke, warm stage lights, and nervous anticipation that defined live television in the 1970s. America was watching. Not 70 million people, not a record-shattering number that would rewrite broadcast history, but enough to matter. Enough that what happened on that stage would ripple beyond the studio walls. Johnny Carson stood behind his desk, relaxed in the way only he could be. His monologue that night moved easily from jokes about President Jimmy Carter to commentary on California's unpredictable weather. The audience laughed on cue. The band played its tight, polished transitions. It felt like any other night on late-night television. Then Johnny introduced his first guest. My first guest tonight is a three-time heavyweight champion of the world. Please welcome Muhammad Ali. The applause began before Ali even stepped through the curtain. When he did, the reaction grew louder, fuller. He wore a light suit that reflected the studio lights, and he moved with that familiar rhythm. Part dancer, part fighter, part showman. He shadowboxed toward Johnny's desk, tossed playful jabs in the host's direction, and grinned at the crowd as if he owned the building. Ali understood television better than most actors. He knew timing. He knew when to pause. He knew how to turn a single sentence into a headline. Johnny thanked him for being there. Ali thanked Johnny for inviting the greatest athlete of all time, and the crowd roared again. The exchange was effortless. They talked about his upcoming fights, about retirement rumors, about life beyond the ring. Ali mixed humor with conviction, poetry with bravado. Even when he was exaggerating, he did it with such charm that people leaned forward rather than rolling their eyes. 20 minutes in, Johnny shifted gears. "We have another guest tonight," he said casually. "An actor whose latest Western is drawing a lot of attention. Clint Eastwood is here." Ali tilted his head slightly. The name wasn't unfamiliar. Everyone in America knew Clint Eastwood by then. He had already cemented himself as the quiet, squinting antihero, the man with no name, the embodiment of controlled toughness. His screen presence was the opposite of Ali's flamboyance. Where Ali was poetry and movement, Eastwood was stillness and silence. Johnny smiled. "You two ever met?" Ali thought for a second. "I've seen his movies," he said. "He don't talk much. I talk enough for both of us." The audience laughed. When Eastwood eventually walked onto the stage, the energy shifted, not because it turned hostile, but because it changed tempo. He entered without theatrics. No sadolboxing, no exagerati gestures. Just a nod, a handshake with Johnny, a measured glance toward Ali. The applause was strong but different, less explosive, more steady. Respectful. They shook hands. There was a flicker of recognition there, not necessarily from a deep personal history, but from two men who understood something about public identity. They both knew what it meant to carry an image larger than themselves. Johnny, sensing opportunity, leaned into it. "Muhammad says he's the greatest. Clint, you played a few tough guys yourself." Eastwood gave the smallest half smile. "Played," he emphasized. Ali leaned forward. "You played tough in movies. I'm tough for real." It wasn't said with venom. It was said with rhythm, with performance. But there was an undercurrent beneath it, the kind that makes live television electric. Eastwood didn't rise to it in the way some might have expected. He didn't challenge Ali. He didn't make grand declarations. He simply replied, "I wouldn't last around with him. That's why I stick to scripts." The audience laughed again, but this time there was admiration in it, for the humility, for the restraint. Ali studied him for a moment. Then he nodded. "Smart man." The tension dissolved, not into rivalry, but into something more interesting: mutual recognition. Two very different versions of masculinity sitting side by side under bright studio lights. One loud, one quiet. One kinetic, one still. They talked about discipline, about preparation, about what it means to be believable. Ali spoke about road work at dawn, about sparring rounds that leave your ribs aching for days. Eastwood spoke about learning to handle firearms safely for films, about studying movement, about trying to make a fictional gunfight feel real without ever pretending it was the same as actual combat. At one point, Johnny asked Eastwood if he'd ever boxed. A little, he admitted. Training for roles. Nothing serious. Ali perked up. You ever get hit for real? Once or twice. Ali grinned. That's how you learn. The exchange could have escalated into bravado, but it didn't. Instead, it turned reflective. They began talking about fear, not in the dramatic sense, but in the honest one. Ali described walking into arenas where thousands of people expected him to win, knowing that a single mistake could change everything. Eastwood described stepping onto film sets, carrying the weight of expectation, aware that audiences believed his characters were unbreakable. It's funny, Eastwood said at one point. People think the tough part is the fight scene. It's not. It's the quiet before it. Ali nodded slowly. That's the same in boxing. There was no call-out, no challenge, no ring built in a television studio, no two-round exhibition. What happened instead was subtler and, in many ways, more real. Two men who represented strength in completely different arenas acknowledged each other's craft. When the segment ended, they stood, shook hands again, and the audience applauded. Not because they had witnessed conflict, but because they had seen contrast without hostility. Backstage, away from the cameras, accounts from crew members later described the atmosphere as relaxed. Ali joked with stagehands. Eastwood thanked the production team quietly. They exchanged a few words out of earshot, the specifics lost to time, but the tone reportedly friendly. In truth, there is no historical record of a live boxing match between them. No Sports Illustrated cover about a late-night sparring spectacle. No Time magazine headline declaring Hollywood versus the heavyweight champion. Ali did appear on The Tonight Show multiple times during the 1970s, and Eastwood was also a frequent guest over the years, but not as combatants in a televised bout. What remains compelling, though, is the idea of what that meeting represented. Ali, at that stage of his life, was more than a boxer. He was a cultural force. His voice carried weight far beyond sports. Eastwood, meanwhile, was shaping an American archetype, the stoic individualist navigating moral gray zones on screen. Both men were, in different ways, redefining what audiences believed toughness looked like. One shouted it, one whispered it. If there was any unspoken tension, it likely came from that contrast rather than personal animosity. Ali thrived on verbal sparring. It was part of his psychological strategy in the ring and part of his entertainment persona outside it. Eastwood, by contrast, built his mystique on understatement. The less he said, the more people projected onto him. The beauty of that Tonight Show appearance, grounded in reality rather than spectacle, is that neither man needed to prove anything physically. Ali's record spoke for itself. Eastwood's filmography did the same. Years later, when Ali's health declined due to Parkinson's disease, much of the public narrative around him shifted from dominance to dignity. Eastwood, who continued acting and directing well into later decades, often spoke about discipline and endurance in ways that echoed athletic philosophy. There is something fitting about imagining them seated side by side under studio lights, not as adversaries, but as craftsmen comparing notes. The myth of a live televised fight is dramatic. It has all the elements people love: ego, challenge, redemption, respect. But the quieter truth is perhaps more meaningful. Real respect does not always require spectacle. Sometimes it exists in acknowledgement, in humor, in restraint. Had they ever truly sparred? There is no verified evidence that they did in any formal capacity. Both trained physically for their professions in different ways, but their arenas rarely overlapped. And yet, culturally, they did share a ring of sorts. Both navigated the expectations of American audiences during a turbulent decade. Both carried public personas that were scrutinized, criticized, admired, and mythologized. On that late-night stage in 1977, what viewers saw was not a boxing match, but a meeting of icons. No referee, no bell, just conversation. In hindsight, that may have been more powerful than any exhibition bout could have been, because the best confrontations aren't always physical. Sometimes they are contrasts in philosophy, in style, in presence. And when handled with composure, they don't end in knockouts. They end in handshakes. If you'd like, I can now